I knew that I could find karate. So when I sought out a new sensei, I wasn't looking for just good karate. I was looking for good people.
What's going on, everybody? Welcome. This is Whistlekick Martial Arts Radio, episode 668. My guest today, Sensei Jonathan Kenney. If you don't know my name, my voice, well, I guess voice. We'll start with voice. If you don't know my voice, my name is Jeremy Lesniak. I'm your host here for the show. I founded Whistlekick a bunch of years ago. Well, you might want to know why. Why did I do that? Because I wanted to do stuff to support traditional martial artists. And that's why we do all the things that we do. What things do we do? Well, go to whistlekick.com, find out. We're going to find a store over there. And that's one of the ways that we cover some of the expenses. And if you use the code podcast15, it's going to get you 15% off anything you find in there, whether it's apparel or protective equipment or, I don't know, an event, a training program. We got a bunch of cool stuff over there. So go check it out. And we're constantly adding things. So if it's been a while, head on over. This show has a separate website, whistlekickmartialartsradio.com. We bring you this show twice a week. And our goal here at Whistlekick with this show specifically is to connect, educate, and entertain traditional martial artists throughout the world. If you want to help the show and the work that we do, there are a number of ways you can help. You could make a purchase. You could share an episode. You could follow us on social media. We're at Whistlekick pretty much everywhere you can think of. You could tell a friend about what we're doing. Maybe pick up a book on Amazon, leave a review, or support our Patreon. patreon.com/Whistlekick. It's a place where we post exclusive content. And if you contribute as little as $2 a month, you're going to get access to at least some of it. The more you contribute, the more we throw your way. And at every tier, including the $2 a month tier, you get bonus merch, stickers and shirts and hoodies and all kinds of cool stuff. Yeah, it depends on what tier you're signed up for, but check it out, patreon.com/Whistlekick. I recently had the good fortune to talk to Sensei Jonathan Kenney, and we talk about a bunch of stuff. And the thing that I think was most apparent to me in this episode was how impactful martial arts has been on not only what he does, but why he does it. Most of our conversation, to me, came back to his why, and it's something that I encourage people to find. What is your why? Well, in this episode, we're going to hear all about Sensei Kenney's why. So here we go. Hey, Jonathan, welcome to Whistlekick Martial Arts Radio.
Thank you for having me. This is unexpected and flattering. I thought I was a nobody, but apparently somebody is keeping tabs on me.
Well, fortunately, it's not too unexpected because we did plan ahead. I didn't ambush you with a microphone, although that would be kind of a fun way to do this show. Just creep around martial artists' houses and just knock on the door and just be like, "Hey, I want to interview you right now." And
that would be very exciting. But of course, what I meant was we have a mutual friend that suggested that we get together, which surprised me.
Well, it's interesting. You use the word nobody, and I could kind of defend that and say don't judge yourself, but I know exactly what you mean in that in the world of martial arts. If we look at celebrity, you're not a name that a lot of people are going to know. We talked about another name, before we got rolling here, a name that a lot of people know, somebody who's been on the show. Mm-hmm. And I understand that people are trying to push me out of that box. And I am fighting tooth and nail because I want to remain a nobody because it's easy. Even if we're going to call ourselves nobodies, that doesn't mean that we don't have impact. And that's the part that I wanted to get to. You have students, you teach them, you change their lives. And I think it's important for everyone listening to know that the impact that we have, the option we have as martial artists, even if we're not school owners or instructors, is so far beyond the potential impact of the average person. And I think we need to celebrate everyone in the industry. And that's why we bring on such a mix of guests.
I couldn't agree more. It's one of the reasons why I feel that way is because I have such high expectations of myself, and I have since the beginning. I have this insatiable crave to help more. I myself started when I was young, 1986, 8 years old, and I fell in love with the martial arts because of my father. It was my father started training in an offshoot of Goju in 1985, and a year later, I watched him. We were at our trailer in the summer, and I watched him on the front lawn do Saifa. And I fell in love with it. I'm like, well, that's what I want to do. That's the rest of my life right there. I was locked in. I was like, that was it for the rest of my life. And so I begged my father from.
Do you remember why? What was it about? Did you look up to your father like a huge amount and you just wanted to imitate anything he did?
So I have an answer to that. And I can only speculate that this is the truth. Because like all these years later, it's like, how did I really feel and think when I was 8? Do I accurately remember how I was feeling, what I was thinking? But I firmly believe that my father was a 9-to-5er, and it was almost like a typical family coming out of that generation where my father worked a 9-to-5 job. My mother was a stay-at-home mom. And when I saw my father do something that I thought that I could do, I fell in love with it because I thought it was beautiful, and it was just this exotic movement. But I was also an opportunity for me to be closer to him. So he would work 9-to-5. He'd come home. We'd have dinner, but he brought his work home with him a lot, and it was an opportunity for me. I felt anyway, it was an opportunity for me to do something that he was doing, and it was something that we could share. And I was right. I fell in love with it, and we've been sharing it ever since. We both trained for over 10 years before we opened our first school together. So in 1999, my father and I opened our first karate school together. And a few years later, I opened our second location in 2005. So it's been something that's been keeping us very, very active together for a very, very long time. And for that, I have so much appreciation for karate, because it's not. I don't know if anyone can say that they had the same sort of relationship. I mean, you have a father, right? But if your father is a 9-to-5er and then you do something completely unrelated, not everybody has the same sort of common interests with their parents. So I'm very blessed to have had that.
There's a lot there. There's a lot there for us to unpack. So how about, let's start with this. Why did your father start training?
So my father started training because of stress. And if you ask him, I've heard the story a dozen or 100 times. He was a 9-to-5er, like I mentioned, and he was climbing up the quote unquote corporate ladder of his business. And he was running into different stresses. He didn't, at that point in time, he had work and family, and that was basically it. And it was my mother that actually encouraged him, look, you have to do something else to de-stress. And so he started training when he was about 40, and that was his de-stress. He'd go and he'd train, he'd blow off steam, and he'd come home, and he had that. I think it started as a hobby to blow off steam. And then we all got into it. My mother was training, my mother was training, my sister was training, and both my brother and I were training. And my brother, myself, and my father, we got our black belts and continued. And my mother and my sister got up to their green belts, right, which was not insignificant for them at the time. And we were just a big karate family, and it was awesome. We all had something to share and talk about. And even today, like, my sister will remember stories from when she was training, and we'd still laugh, and we still have that connection. So even though she hasn't trained in, I don't know, 30 years, she, or maybe 20 years. I don't want to forget how old she is, but she still fondly remembers these experiences and these stories, and these are still memories and experiences that we still share to this day, even so far removed. So it's always been part of our family. It's been a blessing. And my father, even today, still runs our original school, same location since 1999, same location, same passion. So it's it's been a trip.
I've seen a lot of families step into martial arts, and even quite a few of them remain training together. But it doesn't mean that it doesn't create tension when you go home. Now, of course, you were pretty young, so there's no, there's no break in the authority figure. He started martial arts before you. He is your father. He's, your superior, if you want to use that collective term, in both contexts. But as you remained and you earned rank, and the two of you, the way you described it, you opened a school together, that starts to blur that line a little bit. Were there challenges in the family dynamic?
Yes. You're really good at this.
Thank you.
I hadn't even prepared to go through this part of it. In 99, when we opened our school, it was great. I did most of the teaching, and my father, he did a lot of the classes as well, but I was the main instructor. He was the face of the school, the figurehead. He had the final decision on everything, and it was fine for a while. And then, yeah, you're right. The school got too small for the two of us. I moved. We were part of a big trip to China in 2004. I went to Japan and Okinawa before meeting the rest of the group in Macau. No, Hong Kong, not Macau, in Hong Kong. And then once this 3-week tour was over, I stayed in China to continue to train in various systems of Kung Fu. But when I came back, the experience over there was so impactful. When I came back, I knew that I couldn't go back to the dojo, to the school. So when I came back, so that was the summer of 2004. I came back in December 2004. And then I knew that I couldn't go back because it got to a point in time where when I would give instructions or advice to students, if they didn't like what I had to say, they would go over my head and they would talk to my father. Yeah. And that was not just somebody going over my head and talking to the sensei of the dojo. They're talking to the father. He's like, well, I'm going to go talk to your dad. And when I have students that look at me and say, well, I'm going to go talk to your dad, it was very demoralizing, and it made me feel like I didn't have the value that I felt of myself. So when I came back from China, I was very sporadic in terms of my instruction duties at the school. And then the first chance I got, and now my father was not reluctant whatsoever. First chance we got, we knew that I needed to have my own space. So in the summer of 2005, I opened my own location in a different city, and I didn't look back. We were partners for a while, and then once I got to a point where I needed to be completely on my own, I dissolved we dissolved the partnership, and I incorporated my own name and brand. And the dynamic at home, I don't want to say it ever got bad, but there was some straining, right? And
I would be surprised if you said there wasn't.
Yeah,
I don't know that I would believe you if you said there wasn't any tension.
Yeah, and so I moved on, right? And then because he had his way to operate, and I conflicted with that. All right. So he's a thinker and a planner, and I'm a doer. So I will try and do 4 or 5 things by the time he figures out what he wants to do. Right. Now I will fail 3 or 4 times before he even tries once. Right. But I'm an action taker, and that caused a lot of conflict between us. Now because of his planning and his methodical, systematic nature, being an engineer brain, he was right more often than not. But I was just a little impatient, impulsive, and to a degree, I still am impulsive. I think I'm trying to hang on to that youthfulness of it. But yeah, it created a lot of conflict on certain decisions that needed to be made, and opening my own school and having my own students where nobody could go over my head and get satisfaction from someplace else was what was needed. And then once I had my own stable of students and he had his, a lot of the balance was returned. He became my father again, right? And not the sensei of my dojo. Now he was never my sensei, so he never taught me. We were part of an organization, and that instructor was our mutual sensei. So there was never any conflict with instruction, but just the dynamic at the dojo with our dojo with the students. So once I opened up our own space, it was kind of relieved that, and we got to go back to the way it was, where we both trained together with our instructor, and we were, father, son, in our personal lives. So it was a lot better for the two of us. And even better so when I separated I dissolved the partnership and incorporated, then there was no money going back and forth. Right. And that was a big bone of contention, where it's like, I was doing these types of numbers and he was doing those types of numbers. And it was just like, okay, we need to separate numbers and just, get back to being father, son. And so when we did that, that relieved a lot of the tension. Money creates so much tension, even in the martial arts world, right? The money still, creates tension. And once we relieved that, it was better for us. It became a healthier relationship.
Good. I'm curious, have you two on the other side of this? I'm sure there were conversations in the midst of it, but after it all, have you two ever sat down and talked about what that experience was like for each of you?
I don't know if we need to talk about it, to be perfectly honest, because I think the transparency that we have had throughout our quote unquote careers kind of resolved a lot of that. So he knows that I'm action oriented and impulsive, and I don't always think everything through before I take action. I've had a ton of success doing it that way because I'm very intuitive, and I'm just getting things done is what I do. Even if I make a little bit of mistake, I fix it right away. I correct it right away. I'm always moving, always moving, always moving. And he knows that always drove him nuts. And, the way that he took a couple extra days to think about something always drove me nuts. And we were always very transparent about it. So, we have had a wonderful relationship, an open, transparent relationship. So having a separate conversation would be almost redundant, I think, at this point in time.
I get it. Okay.
Like, I love the guy. He's been my biggest supporter. I love the guy. There's nothing I wouldn't do for him. So, and he knows that. He knows that.
I've watched a lot of partnerships dissolve, and quite often in that dissolution, the person or the people that are left take some step, some big thing, something that they felt like they couldn't, pressure, restriction. So when that second location became your location exclusively, did you start doing anything differently?
That's a great question. The short answer is I did things this, oh, that's a hard one to answer, because the short answer is yes, because I didn't have to wait for anybody to approve my decisions.
Mm.
Um, when we were together at our original school, pretty much everything that I wanted to do, we did. It just took longer to get to. But when I was out on my own, the decisions that I wanted to make were made immediately, and action was taken immediately. And a lot, in my mind anyway, he might have a different perception of it, but in my mind, things got done faster, more efficiently. And, um, but did I do anything differently, or would I start doing anything differently? I don't, not initially. From the additional flexibility of decision making, I made a lot more mistakes, which I learned from, and I developed different marketing, systems for, attracting new students that I may not have been able to get to if I wasn't on my own. But I think a lot of the decisions, a lot of the mistakes that I made led to a lot of the successes that I've had as well. So I think that's the only big difference, that I was able to take action quicker and sooner, and know that they were my own actions and my own mistakes. I'm a big fan of responsibility and accountability, and when I feel like somebody else could be hurt by a decision, it does kind of hold me back and reserve me. But when I know that I'm the only person that's going to suffer from a mistake that I make, it makes it easier for me to make decisions and take action, because I'm the only one that has to suffer. And then it's easier for me to correct those mistakes because I'm the only one that's kind of in the hole. So for me, it was easier to take risks being on my own. I guess that's the short answer. It was easier for me
Yeah,
to take risks.
I get it. A lot of martial arts school owners take risks. They try different things in terms of marketing, or they bring their own ideas into everything from curriculum to rank to when to hold classes.
Yep.
Have you taken any risks that worked out really, really well that you'd be willing to share? And by risk, I don't mean that it's necessarily some mind-blowingly different thing, but different than what you were brought up with.
The biggest risk I have ever taken was, and this is the biggest one. And I was part of an organization that in the 80s and 90s was a significant organization. It had dozens of schools, and I was part of that organization since I started in 1986, 8 years old. And I was my instructor. He could do no wrong. In my mind, he was, God status, right? Like a lot of kids think of their sensei, right?
Sure.
And being a part of that organization and opening a school in that organization, my mandate was I have to grow. I have to help this organization get bigger and stronger and grow. Right. But when he started to make decisions that conflicted with the direction that I wanted to go, I bet on myself and I left the organization. And that was, for me, one of the hardest things I've ever done. It's what I knew for 30 years. But I wanted more for myself, and I knew that I couldn't achieve that in that organization. So I bet on myself and I struck out on my own. I became independent. And then for the first time in my life, I was without an instructor. I mean, my father was my biggest supporter, but in terms of karate training and not having a sensei, for example, was a very, very crazy thing. It was a very, very scary thing.
Yeah.
And there was a time where I was lost, and it felt like a divorce, a really, really bad divorce. But at the same time, it also kind of felt like a lottery win, because now even though I had my own dojo, I was still under the umbrella of an organization, so I was still restricted by what the organization wanted to do for its brand. So when I separated from the organization, then it was just all me. I was separated from my father, separated from the organization. I could rebrand and do whatever I wanted, however I wanted. It was scary. It was scary, and um, I would do it again in a heartbeat. I would go through all of those months of fear and anxiety, and there was a period of depression, right, where I just wasn't myself. I would do it all again to have what I have today. Um, so if anybody else is listening and you're wondering, I'm not happy with my organization. Should I stay or should I go? You don't need an organization. People don't sign up with you because you're part of an organization. They sign up with you because they want you. And once I finally realized that, it made life so much better, so much better.
I believe that. I believe that. Now, you talked about some of the challenges in there and it feeling like a divorce, maybe even a rough divorce. How did you process that? That's not easy stuff to walk through.
Honestly, it was hard. Because I felt betrayed. It wasn't just me, having a different direction from the organization. The organization took steps to hurt me, and that was kind of the straw that broke the camel's back. I mean, there was a lot of weird things that I'm not going to talk about with this organization that was pushing me away from them already. But when they took steps to hurt me financially, it was a line that was crossed that I never saw coming. I never thought in a million years he could have done that to me. And when he did, I was like, okay, I guess this is the direction that I'm going now. And it was, like I said, he was so much a part of my development when I was young, and to have that, have that hurt caused at the end there, it was like my heart was broken. My heart was broken. Yeah. But it was the best thing for me. And I want to thank my wife for being the rock that she was during that whole thing. I felt worthless for a time, and she made sure that I felt my worth, that she felt that I needed to hear on a constant regular that my students still loved me, and I still had value, even though I wasn't valued by my former organization. So it was, there were some dark days, a lot of tears and some dark days. And so what I did was, from then I threw myself into training, and I sought out anything and anyone. So back in 2017 was probably the most pivotal, one of the most pivotal years of my martial arts career, because I started actively seeking out instruction from other experts. The guys, Jeremy and Michael at Karate Culture, they came to my area. A good friend of mine, Ryan Shields, he brought them in, and I was able to train with them. Another friend of mine, Adet Rice, brought in Jesse Enkamp, and I went to that seminar. I also saw Ian Abernethy that same year, so that was a full year for me. And then even Paul and Michelle Enfield I saw that year. So I was being exposed to these just fantastically talented, educated martial arts masters, and it blew my mind because I hadn't seen this level of karate before. I mean, my former instructor did anything and everything he could to prevent us from training with other instructors based on this perverted sense of loyalty and Japanese. Well, you don't train with other instructors and da 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 da. He wasn't protecting, the organization. He was preventing us from seeing how unskilled he was compared to other experts around the world. He was preventing us from realizing his deficiencies. So when I started training with these other masters, it's like, wow, I fell in love with the functional approach that Ian Abernathy and Michael and Jeremy from Karate Culture they were demonstrating. I fell in love with the playfulness and the skill of Jesse Enkamp. And then it was through Jesse Enkamp that I met Hanshi McCarthy, and I was just overwhelmed by his charisma and his function with his approach to karate. And that's when I knew the writing was on the wall, and it was 2017 was a big year. It was a big year.
Big year, yeah.
And after being exposed to all these individuals and knowing that I wanted more from karate, when my former organization, when they, behaved, I'll say it politically correctly, when they behaved the way that they did, I knew it was the right thing to do at the right time, but it didn't hurt any less. When they betrayed me that way, it didn't hurt any less. But I still knew it was the right thing. So that's why at that time, it felt like my heart was broken, felt like a bad divorce, but it also felt like winning the lottery, because I was outside of that environment and I could start my life over, basically, was what it felt like.
I get it. Those are some impactful people. And the part that's bouncing around my head is I'm wondering, had you had, let's say, a stronger, more supportive organization, maybe if you hadn't gone through some of the challenges with your father, what if you were one of the rare business partnerships that knocked it out of the park and you were better off with each other? Would you have been as open to these other folks? Would you have found them? So what do you think?
I think that probably not. If I was completely happy with my organization, no, I probably would not have been seeking for outside information. The problem with what I was experiencing at the time is I was still, I'm in my early 40s and I still feel like I'm young and strong, although some days are not convincing me of that. But I wanted a more functional approach, and the organization that I was with descended into a theoretical approach, meaning that they were kata based, and he was teaching a new kata from a different system every week, and it was just all kata all the time. And if that's what you're into, I appreciate it and I respect it. It wasn't what I was into. So if I was completely happy in terms of the business sense, would I still be with the organization? Probably, but would it have prevented me from seeking outside? I don't know. I want to say yes, but if I was completely happy, maybe I don't. I don't 100% know. I do know.
And that's, go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say that it's a hypothetical question, of course. But what had happened was the organization really didn't want its members to be super successful. They wanted it was a system of control where I wanted to open multiple schools in the organization, and he actively prevented it. He just did not want any one member of the organization to be too successful. And it was, so I was going to be leaving anyway, because the ceiling was just so low for the success that was, what's the word I'm looking for? The success that he wanted for his members, his dojo members, could not exceed his own. And when you have an organization that just kind of stifles your growth, it's a recipe for collapse. And that organization has actually disbanded and collapsed since 2017, since I left. So it was just good timing for me, because nobody is a part of that organization anymore because, like I said, it just collapsed. I mean, the support for its members just weren't there. The development for success just was not there, and as a result, it has collapsed. And honestly, it was a little overdue. So
sadly, it happens all too often. I think quite often organizations start with good intention, but for all the sorts of reasons that you've talked about and so many more, it turns into a power grab. And that's not to say that that all martial arts organizations, affiliations, et cetera, are bad. I don't think the majority of them are, but it doesn't mean that they're for everyone.
Yeah,
even the good ones.
Yeah, and I have since I actually love being part of an organization. I have since joined another organization. I'm with GKC Global right now, but I was very careful before moving on and quote unquote getting in bed with another organization because of how much I was hurt. But here's what I did. I interviewed, and obviously, you don't want to disrespect the instructors or the senseis, but I interviewed multiple instructors before committing because I knew that I could find karate. I knew that I could find an instructor that could teach me karate. I knew that I could do that. So when I sought out a new sensei, I wasn't looking for just good karate. I was looking for good people. I wanted to connect with people that actually had my success as part of their plan with me and for me. Yeah. So I went this route. I talked to this guy. I talked to this guy. I talked to this guy. And nobody really fit what I wanted. I had one guy. I went to see this one guy, a high-ranking instructor in the area, and I showed him a kata, all right, that I had known, and he looked at me, and the first thing that came out of his mouth was, "Oh, I can fix you." And I was like, "I'm not broken. I might be different, but I'm not broken." So I never went back to him, right? Because that to me is a red flag. I didn't need that. When I went I went down to California actually to see Sensei Paul and Sensei Michelle Enfield, and I showed him the Sanchin that I had learned from my previous organization, and I just loved his response. It was much different than anything he had ever seen before, and he looked at me and goes, "Huh, I hadn't seen it done that way before. Well, this is how we do it here." And it's like, well, that was perfect. This is the type of person, let alone martial artist, that I'm looking for. Somebody that doesn't care if it's different, right? And isn't going to judge me for being different. And from then on, I mean, I've stayed with GKC Global because I honestly, sincerely believe that they want me to be as successful as I want to be. So that was when I knew I was home. But you're right. Some organizations, they have this old school mentality and it's not for everybody. And then maybe that is what you want. But I did want to be part of an organization because I was looking for a sensei and an instructor that can further my martial arts, my goju skill and knowledge. But I was looking for the right chemistry of good people. And the people in this organization have been nothing short of wonderful, and so that's why I'm with GKC Global and nice. Hanshi McCarthy for that matter. I am a member of his organization as well. I don't want to leave him out. He was one of the most influential individuals through that transition from my former organization. He really spoke on my behalf and helped me get through different challenges before I was able to land on the direction that I wanted to go. And his organization, his people, also some of the best, most wonderful people that I've ever encountered in the martial arts community. So I don't want to leave him out because nice. It's like family. It's like family.
A good martial arts school is family, and sadly, there are plenty of examples, you hinted at some, where the principles, the ethics that are common in most martial arts schools don't translate into the business side of things. And it's really a disappointment. But when you do find those people, and I've had the pleasure of working with a number of those people, it really is refreshing because you can let your guard down a bit. Just as if you're training, if you're running a drill with someone and you know they're not going to hit you,
yep,
you can relax.
Yep.
You can focus on whatever the intent of that drill is. You can focus on whatever the goals of your school or other business are. And I know there are people out there who haven't had the opportunity to experience that. And I hope that they do, because it is so refreshing, so night and day from the other way doing it.
Yeah. It's actually part of a, in Canada, we have Sport Canada, and their national model. I actually finished a module with them talking about old school versus new modern, and you don't have to be old school. You just, if you were raised in an old school system and it was successful for you, and I do believe that there are people that have been very successful being brought up in an old school mentality where intimidation, even pain, is part of the culture to push you to succeed. But when they become coaches themselves or senseis or whatever, they only pass on what was successful for them, right? And they press this intimidation, this Hanshi McCarthy also calls it the Senpai Kohai relationship, where the Senpai is always right no matter what, and the Kohai has to follow and comply no matter what. The new method of instructing is not, it's not like that. I mean, times have changed, and there's not much room for that old school mentality anymore, where you just punish people for thinking differently than you. It needs to be understood that although senseis are people who have gone before, they're still just people, right? And they are just as much human as any student, and even any white belt needs to be respected just the same as any black belt. And it kind of, that's the kind of the environment that I want to foster here, and being part of GKC Global, and especially even the KU system with Hanshi McCarthy. It's like you're respected for your effort level. Just put in the time and love the people that are around you, and everything will be happy. And that's what I love. Just put in the time, put in the work, all right, and everybody's treated almost equally. It's I love the new way, the new method.
Let's play out a hypothetical, because I'm curious how you would handle this. And maybe you've had a school for 15 years, 16 years, if I'm doing the math right.
From 99 to now, I've been teaching.
Okay, if we stack up there, yeah. Let's say you've got a student that comes to you and they say, I'm really feeling called to open my own school. What'd you do?
Oh my gosh. I have been waiting for that for a while. I would help them. I would do everything in my power to make sure that they are the best version of themselves, so that they can be the best version that their students need. I've had a couple of people in the past that I've been leading towards that goal, and ultimately it wasn't for them, and they moved on to other things. But I would love the opportunity to lead one of my students to open their own school, whether it's a branch of my brand, Toraguchi Martial Arts, or something they wanted to do for themselves. I would love that, and I would help them all the way. Yeah, I mean that's a simple answer. I would love it.
Easy.
And I would obviously avoid pitfalls that I had been trapped into as well.
You're leading me into the follow-up. That was what I was going to ask.
Yeah. Go ahead.
What would you avoid? What are the things you'd be making sure you didn't do? I'm sure the people listening are curious. I'm curious.
I would not prevent them from making money. I would not prevent them. And it sounds like such a weird thing to say. It sounds like such a weird thing to say. But my former organization, like I said, wanted the brand to be so tightly controlled that we were literally restricted from making money. In a single meeting, this was, I don't know, 2015, 2016, he he said, I laugh every time I think about this. He said, no social media, no Google, no YouTube, no nothing. We're going to use print advertising. And it was like, is he serious? Is this a conversation that's actually occurring right now? He was serious. He wanted to tightly control the narrative so much that we were not allowed to use social media to promote and advertise our schools. We couldn't use Google Ads, for example. Right? He wanted us off the internet. And it was so bizarre considering the times. It's like, okay, this is ridiculous. And it got to a point in time where I wanted to, right now, I mean, for the last 20 years, after school programs have been big, right? And there was a time where you could have made, a lot of money doing an after school program. You pick up the kids up, you bring them here, you teach them karate, and then, he said no, right? He said, no, absolutely not. No after school programs, no this. He was trying to tightly restrict our ability to generate revenue.
But that can't have been the reason he gave. I can't imagine anyone openly saying, I just don't want you to make money. He must have had a reason that he floated.
You're right. And what he told us, and his big mandate, I think, was to just get people off their devices, less electronics off the devices. And the idea that he told us, I don't know what his real motivation was, but what he told us was that for us to promote on Google and social media and YouTube and that sort of thing was encouraging people to be on their devices to find us. And the whole mandate was to get people off their devices and into the dojo, but we couldn't get them into the dojo because nobody uses print advertisement. Like print advertisement is almost dead. I know there are still some magazines, but I mean, everything is online. Everything's on the internet. But that was the big mandate that he told us. And it was just hard. It was just weird. It's like, this is not the industry. This is not the marketing, success anymore. Print ad is wasted money. Like, it was like for years and for years, you put an advertisement in the phone book, like the paper phone book, right? You have a big ad in the phone book, right? When people actually went through the phone book to find you, right? But when the internet became the internet, right, there isn't even a phone book printed anymore. So it was something was lost in connection. I mean, that's what he told us, and what his actual mandate was, I don't know. I don't know if it was different. I don't know if he actually believed that. I don't know. But it stifled a lot of us, and a lot of us pulled away, and a lot of us pulled out because we were trying to run a full-time dojo, and we felt stifled in our ability to generate revenue, and so we just started pulling out.
Okay. Right on.
So,
go ahead.
Yeah, no, I would. My preference is to move on from talking about this former organization because
sure.
Sure. I don't want to give them any more attention.
I understand. I was going to detour.
Okay, good.
So we talked about what you might do if a student comes to you and wants to open a school.
Yeah.
That's one of many things that happen in the life cycle of a long-standing school. And, unless you're planning on shutting your school down, which doesn't sound like there's any plan to do that anytime soon. there are a bunch of other things that are coming. There are other milestones. There are, with that timetable, I'm expecting you've promoted people to a number of higher ranks. And as a school, and even if it's not formally an organization, you have an organization, a collection of people. As that collection grows and ages, it can be really difficult to balance finding your own personal identity beyond the person at the front, however you want to term that, in the school. How do you balance that?
I don't know.
Okay.
And that actually brings me back to what I had said at when we first got together, in terms of, where I am in my martial arts career and where it will ultimately end up. It's like we're talking about, that legacy. Like, I don't have children. So I'm not leaving my school to my kids. So what happens to my school when I'm ready to retire or move on to another life? Does somebody take over? Does it close? And I would love to open multiple schools and have them operate for decades after I'm gone. Mm. That would be a good legacy. In the current organization that I'm in, I'm just happy training right now. I'm happy to experience the different things that are coming to me right now, with Karate Canada and my provincial sports organization. Currently it was called OKF, but I think they're going back to Karate Ontario. But anyway, I'm getting more involved with my provincial and my national sport organization. I have a number of students that are competing, and will over the next 10 years will compete hopefully at a high level. But in terms of like where I'm going to end up, I don't know. Right now, I'm just trying to work and develop my students as best as I can, and I'm still trying to improve myself. And I don't know what's going to happen, where I'm going to be in the next 5 or 10 years or longer. Which is, one of the things I've been thinking about leading up to this interview. I honestly wish I had an answer for that. If I had a student that wants to open a dojo, boom, I'm going to go all in and help that person be successful and avoid some of the things that I did when I was first open. I mean, when I first opened, we didn't know how to run a school. We just sat there in the chair waiting for people to call or show up. We didn't know how to be proactive. We weren't instructed on how to be proactive in acquiring new students. So if I had a student that wanted to open a school, it's like, okay, this is how you be proactive. This is how you drive, students to your dojo. I would be that mentor and leader that, I felt like I didn't have when my father and I first opened. So other than that, it's one day. It's one day. Right now, I just am focused on getting renovations done in my house so I can move home and sleep in my own bed. That's today's goal. So other than that, continue to teach, and hopefully that I can be impactful. Like I've been thinking about one of my most recent students. She I'm not going to say her name in case she doesn't want to be given the attention, but she had been training with me for 10 years, and she called me one time. She said, "Sensei, I'm applying to Harvard, and can you write me a reference letter?" And I was like, "Oh my gosh, like that's a real thing. Like, of course." And she ended up accepting at the University of Toronto. So she wants to become what's it called? A heart surgeon, cardio something. I forget the name.
Cardiothoracic.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah. So now she's at U of T becoming a doctor. And it's like, oh my gosh, like I helped her along those way. I mean, if I said something to her that helped guide, her success, I mean, that makes me feel really good. But um, that's my current mandate. Just continue to help as many as I can. And somebody wants to open a school, right? That I can help them do that. I'll help them do that. But in terms of my legacy, I don't know what it's going to look like until it appears to me in the future. I don't even know how to answer that question. And now I sound like I'm rambling in circles. So
no worries. You're not rambling at all. What we do on this show, it doesn't follow a specific path. It's and we could easily bring in some martial arts metaphors, fights or any kind of free form movement, right? Sometimes it looks really good, sometimes it's not. But at the end of the day, with enough skill, it's effective. And I think that's where we've been today. Just because there were a couple points that maybe guests usually listen to the show and are always harder on themselves than everyone else, because let's face it, we're martial artists and we don't progress unless we're pushing ourselves. And we tend to bring that attitude to a lot of other aspects of our lives. But this has been a great chat. I hope you don't think otherwise, but even if you do, it's in the past. At this point, right? Like we're moving forward.
Yeah, it's just it's been. I just want to make sure that if this is something that my students listen to and future generations listen to, I don't want to come across as jaded. The experiences in my past have made me who I am, and I'm very happy with who I am. And moving forward, I think the most important thing that I can give to my students or anybody else, for that matter, that asks for my help or my advice is to steer them away from the things that have hurt me. I don't believe anybody needs to go through the type of hurt that I went through to be a better person. And I go back to the old expression, learn from other people's mistakes because you'll never live long enough to make them all yourself. Mm. So what that implies is that making mistakes is a good thing. You can learn a lot from making mistakes, but you'll never live long enough to make them all yourself. So it's important to learn from other people's mistakes. And I have made several lifetimes of mistakes. Of course, it sounds like I'm being very harsh on myself, but that's how I feel. And if somebody wants to ask me for my help or my advice, I would give it without a second thought. I want to be surrounded by people that are successful. And the best way to surround yourself with successful people is to help make them successful yourself. And that's a recipe for success on its own.
Totally. If people want to get a hold of you, find you online, where do they go?
The easiest way to find me is at oakvillekarate.com. Info at oakvillekarate.com via email. Those are the two biggest. On YouTube, Toraguchi Martial Arts. Toraguchi meaning tiger's hand, the technique in Goju, Toraguchi. Other than that, you're welcome to phone me, but I'm not gonna blast my cell phone on a podcast. But they can definitely reach us through email or to the website.
Okay. And there are people listening. They're still listening. Let's say some of your students are listening. Let's say future students or even students of students are listening. What final thoughts would you leave them with?
Ask questions. Ask lots of questions. If you are training with somebody that doesn't like questions, and I'm not even talking about karate, I'm talking about in life. If you are with somebody that doesn't appreciate your curiosity, time to find somebody else. Find somebody that can help you with your curiosity. And I'm not saying that you should find an instructor that knows everything, because if you have an instructor that leads you to believe that they know everything, that's also a red flag. Find somebody else, because nobody knows everything. and allow them to grow with you. Find somebody that will grow with you, that will challenge you, but respect you and grow with you. That would be the most important thing. And just be true to yourself. Just be true to yourself. I know that's a cliche thing to say. But when I was, years ago, I didn't feel like I was being true to myself, and striking out on my own. I was allowed to express who I really was and who I really am. And I'm with people that empower me to continue to grow. But yeah, never stop being curious, and always be true to yourself. Follow your gut. Your gut is more often than right will give you the warning bells and that you need. And yeah, don't be afraid to continue to look for answers. All right, never stop asking questions. I think that's the most important thing that I would say. Like, even with my students, when they ask me questions, I'm not going to lie to them. I look them straight in the face and say, "That's a great question. I don't know the answer to that. Let me ask my sensei." All right? And they respect that. And if they don't respect that, they're usually not my students for very long, and it wasn't a good fit. And that's okay too. All right, I'm not in a position to fight people and cling to people. I understand that if something's not a good fit, I wish them well. I don't get offended when students want to move on and seek other instruction. In fact, I will more than likely put them in the right direction and refer them to somebody else. Because like I said, when other people are successful, that success, even indirectly, reflects on me. So it makes me feel good when other people are successful. But don't stop asking questions. Keep training hard. Sweat equity is real. I think is a good one. Sweat equity is real. I know that so many people they learn and they learn and they learn, but they didn't put in the reps. And I can say that the longevity of your success depends on the effort that you put into it. You don't need to be successful today just a little better than yesterday, because effort over time equals success. And you just got to be patient, put one foot in front of the other, and don't stop. I say to my students all the time, never quit, never surrender.
I told you at the intro that I was really appreciative of Sensei digging into the why, all the things that happened, the openness that he had with a difficult situation, running a school with his father and this organization that didn't treat him well. There are plenty of examples of martial artists who don't recover from those challenges, from being, I guess we could say in one case, treated differently than they felt they deserved, and in the other, just not quite finding a fit. But he didn't quit. He kept going. He found a way to make what he wanted from the world around him. And I think that that's something martial artists generally do a really good job with. We find our place in the world, and we occupy that space well. I had a great time talking to him. So, Sensei, thanks for coming on the show. I appreciate all of your time and your openness. This was a lot of fun, and I hope to talk to you again. Listeners, if you want the show notes, the photos and the links and all that good stuff, go to whistlekickmartialartsradio.com. Every episode gets its own page. Remember, this is 668. And if the work that we do means something to you, if you're up for supporting us, well, you've got some options. You can share an episode, maybe leave a review on Facebook or Google or Apple Podcasts. Or you could contribute to our Patreon, patreon.com/whistlekick. And hey, did you know that we designed a fight conditioning program that will, well, I designed it, so I know what's in it. So I'm going to guarantee that if you follow it, you will be better prepared for your next competition or testing, or if you just like to train differently, life. Check it out. You can find it at whistlekickprograms.com, or if you want to use the code, go to whistlekick.com and look for the Whistlekick Fuel, formerly branded as fight conditioning. That code, in case you forgot, podcast 15. If you've got guest suggestions or topic suggestions or just general feedback, I want to hear it. Jeremy@whistlekick.com. Remember, our social media is @whistlekick. So that brings us to the end of another episode. Until next time, train hard, smile, and have a great day.